Hi students, hey, we're getting farther along into the week and I've got a summary video for you on what you've been doing in your science notebooks on the study of plants. Uh, uh, yes, so here it is. I want to kind of tell you the answers in case you weren't able to figure some of them out. So the first page, we talked about the cycle of plant life cycle, and about the germination and the sprouting and how the seed develops, how eventually the plant dies and the seed falls to the ground. There's 5 steps in that, as you know. On the next page, it talked about the heredity of plants and how scientists nowadays are creating more and more plants all the time. When they do that, they can oftentimes make the plant stronger and more resistant to problems that the plant might face from insects or other things in nature. We mentioned boysenberries here for this match. This would be combining 2 kinds of apples and making a new one. This ends up actually being an apple called a McIntosh, and it takes a Golden Delicious, I can't remember what this one is, but those 2 do make the McIntosh. And then this, grapefruit, and another, I believe that's a mandarin orange, can produce what's called a tangelo, which kind of has a little bump on the top of it. Those are really tasty if you haven't had those before. The next page on Tech Connect talking about aquaponics, growing things with nutrient-rich water. We mentioned that, we were reading about it. It's kind of the way of the future to grow more things and not have to use a lot of open ground. So an advantage is it uses less water, 75% less we learned. It saves water and recycles dirty water, so that is a huge advantage. We found out how they're pretty expensive to get started. You know, a greenhouse like this would cost you quite a bit of money and all the equipment and the different tubes for the plants and things. And it does need to be checked often. You don't want it to be too hot. Oftentimes they put fans in these to make sure the temperature is controlled at just the right temperature, or it could damage the plants. And on the flip side, again, it's talking about the young man identified as John and how he's helping people learn how to use aquaponics to grow their food. And we were talking about what a plant cell looks like, what the parts would be. We talked about the control center. It's called the nucleus. The thin covering on the outside is number 2, the cell membrane. Actually, that's just inside the cell wall. The cell wall is the outer point. Part 3, where's that? Yeah, the cell wall is the very outer part of the cell. Then the membrane comes inside. And then number 4, the jelly-like material that fills the inside of a plant cell is known as the cytoplasm. And then the chloroplast, there's a bunch of those in the cell, is what is green, and it helps produce chlorophyll, which is the energy source of the plant. Actually, when you get nutrition from things like plant leaves, those chloroplasts, you're getting that energy that the plant produces, and it's giving you energy. Okay. And the answers for the final page, we had 2 false at the top, and then next, pollinators carry chlorophyll to other flowers. No, they carry pollen, so that would be false. A botanist studies rocks. No, they study plants. That would be false. Some plant parts can grow new plants. That is true. You can take cuttings from a plant, and sometimes if you sprout it in water, it'll develop roots, and you can plant it and grow it. Not all plants can do that, but some can. Plants make food through photosynthesis. That's correct. Parts of a flower include the petal, stamen, pollinator, and ovules. Well, that's all correct, except pollinator isn't part of the plant. That's what helps get the plant started and growing. So that's kind of a tricky one, but that was false. And the steps in the life cycle of a flowering plant: 1, a seed falls in the ground and starts growing. 2, the seed becomes a tiny plant. 3, the plant forms a flower bud. 4, pollination happens. Flower is pollinated. When that happens, a new seeds can develop, and finally those new seeds fall to the ground. or blow off in the wind as the flower dies. Sometimes they're carried away by birds and other things. So those are those processes, okay? All right, and then the optional packet for the week, the answers on those. Here's the crossword. Talked about how every seed wears a seed coat. Seeds can be different shapes and sizes. A partly formed plant is in a seed's embryo. Some seeds never sprout. Now, I noticed some of you that I gave you bean seeds, you told me, my bean seeds didn't sprout. And that happens, you know, unfortunately. Most people eat seeds every day. Think about all the foods that you eat that may be a seed type item. A seed needs lots of water to sprout. The wind scatters some seeds. Very true. And then on the down answers, every seed has 3 parts. Okay. Most seeds do not need light to sprout. They can sprout in the dark. Like, think about how they're under the soil and it's dark, but they still sprout. The seed coat protects a seed. Seeds have their own food. A coconut is a big seed. It really is. It's huge, isn't it? Probably the biggest seed I can think of. Seeds travel in many different ways, and spreading out new plants to new places. Think about those dandelions that are out in the fields that we see now. The seeds blow off and you could have new dandelions all over the place. Plants make seeds. That's true. So lots of answers to that one. On the back side, about leaves, we talked about how some trees change color. The green leaves of a broadleaf tree, they can turn yellow, orange, and red. Broadleaves would be like maples and oaks. Leaves are the food factories for a tree. Yeah, the energy from the tree is saved in the leaves. The green coloring in that is called chlorophyll. When the leaves receive enough sunlight, air, and water, they can make the food for the tree. That's the photosynthesis process right there. In the fall, however, trees receive less sunlight than they do in the spring and summer months. Without enough sunlight, the green coloring of the leaves starts to disappear. The leaves stop producing food for the trees. When this happens, the leaves start to change color. And that's kind of a cool thing, because the leaves without chlorophyll are all these brilliant colors. When the chlorophyll disappears, you can see them before the leaves fall to the ground. Yes, those orange pigments and yellow and other bright colors that were once hidden by the chlorophyll can now be seen. And it talks about without chlorophyll, the leaves cannot make food and eventually do fall from the tree. Okay. The steps in nature's food factory. We talked about step 1, carbon dioxide from the air enters the plant through the leaves. Step 2, which is pointed out here, water and minerals from the soil are carried to the leaves through the roots and stem out there where the leaves can produce food. Step 3, energy from the sun is absorbed by the chlorophyll in the leaves. Right here, the sun shining down. Step 4, the leaves use the sun's energy to produce food from carbon dioxide and water. And again, that food is stored in the leaves. The food produced travels through the stem to all parts of the plant. Some of it is used by the plant and the rest is stored. Oh, I'm sorry, my mistake on that. Number 5, the food making process releases oxygen to the air. So as photosynthesis occurs, oxygen comes away from the leaves, which we need, and animals need as well, of course. And then step 6, the food produced travels through the stem to all parts of the plant. Some of it is used by the plant, the rest is stored. And if you were to take all those answers and put them in on the blanks below, according to the indication of the underlines that were in all of these statements, you get to spell out the big word photosynthesis, which means taking the sun's energy and making it into food. Okay, good on that one. All right, and finally, oh my goodness, this is the tough answer key to the word search here. So look at how these answers were all stretched out. I won't go through it all, but that's the pattern. And if you want to just kind of hit the pause button on your video, you can go back and check, but those were challenging to say the least. Okay, so thanks. Hope that helps you to get ready for your little challenge that you'll have for plants later today. Thanks.